All right, part two. Let's shoot this turkey. This is from the Women of Marvel podcast. Like I said in the last video, if you want to know what's part of a major part of the problem, just listen to these people. Just listen to what they're saying and their take on what makes a hero and what makes a good story. When I get to this, this is from 2344 in the podcast. I believe this is the honorary Woman of Marvel, Stephen Wacker. He said, "What would it be like if we had a character that people were dressing up as?" I got news for him. People are already doing that. There's Comic-Cons where people do that. You don't have to wonder what that's like. That's astroturf. When you're doing that and for the sake of that, to get people to do that, which is, I think that's why we've gotten into the Marvel, as I call it, the low effort costume era of Marvel, where you see America Chavez, who's basically wearing jean shorts and a jacket. You see Kamala Khan is Miss Marvel. That's a very easy. You see these really easy costumes to do, and they want to make that to the wider audience, which is astroturf. It's not really people. I've seen women go through a lot. Go look at Riddle. Go look at the cosplayers, Riddle and Yaya. They go through a lot of work to look like characters that they identify with, and mostly that guys will pay for pictures of them wearing and things like that. But that was already there. You don't have to ask that question. And if a character is actually popular, like Scarlet Witch, the women will make that costume. They will build that costume, and with any character that's popular, they'll go through the trouble of making that because they love that character. They talk about the early days of the design. Kelly Sue DeConnick brought in a designer, a professional designer. This is the problem: is they're worrying about heroes who look like heroes instead of heroes who act like heroes who are heroes. And when you start doing that, then the surface traits are all that matters. The looks like a hero, is a woman, is whatever else. That's all they're worrying about. They're not worried about the things that made Tony Stark Iron Man. They're not worried about the things that made Steve Rogers Captain America or Peter Parker Spider-Man. They're worrying about, do they look good in the suit? Do they look like a hero? Is it iconic? If you create a character who's iconic, their costume will become iconic around it. Because the personality and the character, people being able to see themselves in the character, is what makes it iconic. But you get into the situation where they talk about, later on in this podcast, where they talk about a fiction suit. Instead of writing so that the audience, the reader, can see themselves in that character, what they've done is, and they talk about this and they laugh and they really enjoy the term fiction suit, to where they can put themselves into the book. Sana Amanat talks about that with Miss Marvel. Margaret Stoll talks about it with Captain Marvel. As she goes through the life of Captain Marvel, was basically her playing out issues that she has with her mother through. She puts the Captain Marvel suit on and she plays these issues out through Captain Marvel, through this comic book, and that it reflects in the numbers that it sold. I gotta go find a screenshot from Comic-Con of the life of Captain Marvel, the sales on this book. This whole video is going to be mostly about them talking about Captain Marvel, and I'm just going to show, in 2019, in this golden age of nerd culture and comic book movies are the biggest movies in the box office, you have your marquee character coming off of a movie just a few months ago. Your marquee character sells 30,000 a month. Ships 30,000 a month. I could probably gather up about 15,000 of those. If I went to every comic store and just scooped them up, I could probably gather up about 15,000 unsold Captain Marvel books. But in this situation, you've got this astroturf. You're creating astroturf in this character. You want people to cosplay. You do the easy costumes so people will cosplay. You bring in a designer so it looks iconic. You put yourself in the character. You're used to generate. I don't know what it's supposed to generate, but it definitely didn't generate sales. So you see all this astroturf stuff, and it's not. resonating because you've taken the reader away. You've made them less of a factor in the story, in the connection with the character, and it's more about you telling a story about you. And that's when they talk about this with Sana Amanat and Miss Marvel. Nobody wants to pay $4.99 for a comic book about Sana Amanat. And the same goes for a comic book about Margaret Stoll. And the same goes for Kelly Sue DeConnick. And the same goes for every writer out there. Jim Lee. Nobody wants to read Jim Lee as Batman. They want to read Batman written by Jim Lee, or Jawbreakers written by Richard C. Myers. They want to read that. They don't want to read the Richard C. Myers Superpower Hour. They don't want to read that. As much as I like DNC, I wouldn't buy that. But oh man, so yeah, they talk about these fiction things, and that's the scary thing that they're doing at Marvel. And these are people with power. Margaret Stoll writes a lot of books at Marvel. Sana Amanat, she's the political commissar at Marvel Comics, so she has her hand in a lot of things at Marvel, and it's scary that this is how they see the creation of a character. This is how they see. This is what they see as important to it. They went on. Margaret Stoll has a conversation with Sana Amanat where Sana basically went to her and said, "Hey, you should write a monthly Captain Marvel." Margaret Stoll replies to her, "How could I?" Where Sana says, "How could you not?" Good. That's a great reason. How could you not? How could you not write? And you see the end result is 8 reboots in 5 years of this character who's supposed to be your marquee character, the one that you're pushing out there as your marquee character. She's the new Spider-Man. She's got her face on all the things and all the, back in the 90s, Spider-Man was on everything. And now you get 20 years later, an unhealthy industry, a crumbling market, and a crumbling outlet, which is comic book stores, and this AstroTurf character that you keep using as a fiction suit is your marquee character. And another thing that she said, this was Margaret Stoll, and it was really, it's about the hero's journey. She says the hero's journey is the journey from side character to main character, and it was audible. It was just painful. It was an audible eye roll when I heard this, and at no point in the story of Star Wars, I think about the classic hero story, the hero arc. You think about Star Wars, because that's the biggest example we have in the past century. At no point in the story of Star Wars was Luke a side character. The hero's story, the hero's story arc is humble beginnings, realization of something bigger, of something of power, of an ability to a power. And then as they're rising, there's a fall. Empire Strikes Back. You lose your hand. You find out Darth Vader's your dad. And you have that hero has a choice. Just like Luke could have easily been dark side, could have easily turned to the dark side. That's my dad. I want to go be with my dad. He says, if I join him, we can rule the galaxy and I can impose my will on it. But it's that choice. That's not the hero's journey isn't from side character to main character. The hero's journey isn't for Flash Thompson to become the main character and become Spider-Man as Spider-Man goes to the side. No, it's for Peter Parker to have that rise to power, to have that realization of power, then to have that fall. And nobody's fallen better and more often than Spider-Man, and nobody's risen and stepped up to the occasion better than Spider-Man. So you get somebody like this, and this is part of the problem. This is the main problem with Captain Marvel is that's the story. That's the what they think as the hero's journey, going from being Miss Marvel, sort of B-list, C-list Avenger, to having her own comic book, being the A-lister, being the marquee. And that's it. That's all she has to do. All she has to do is go from there, from C or B-lister, to having multiple of her own books. And that's it. The journey's over. You're a hero. And that's the problem that you see right now with Marvel Comics, with particularly Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel actually was a very loved character and actually can be a very beloved character, but you keep putting people on it, as it's shown in this podcast. You keep putting people on it that don't understand comic books. And she goes on to say at 2926, this is a quote from Margaret Stoll. I learned to write comics by writing comics. Plot twist, all of those comics that she learned to write comics by writing comics were done at Marvel. We're done on major characters. We're done on Captain Marvel, on her own series. And the results show, because 8 reboots in 5 years, and your name is on quite a few of those, that's part of the problem. I'm going to leave that alone. I think I've picked on that enough, but the funniest part, one of the funniest part is at 3406. It talks about the life of Captain Marvel being the story around Carol's mom and her mom. That's where she's transposing her issues with her mom through Carol's mom. And I am definitely going to have the numbers of the final issue of that in the background, so look at the screen. She said, began to resonate with the readers. These are the numbers for the final issue of The Life of Captain Marvel. Resonate. Who is that resonating with? Yeah, nobody. Oy, man, there's so much more that I could go on this. And at 45:58, probably the funniest part that she said is that Margaret Stoll rejects the girl box routinely. Your whole career is because you put yourself in the girl box. So don't even play that stupidity. You can sell that crap somewhere down the street, because nobody here in the buying public of Marvel Comics, nobody paying attention, nobody who's not a shill media believes that at all. But that's it. That's all. I'm gonna wrap this one up. I got to paste some of this stuff together and get some screenshots behind this. But that is the Women of Marvel podcast. That's one podcast. I got 2 videos out of one podcast, and probably more entertaining than the actual podcast, because the actual podcast was just a bunch of shills blowing smoke about themselves and each other, and it was absolutely boring. But yeah, tell me your take on this. Tell me if you've listened to it. Tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, I'm always up for discussion, but that's all I got for this one. It's a 2-parter, and it went pretty long. Thanks for listening. You guys go out, have a good day, and I will have a comic book review coming probably tomorrow, and Savage Avengers, and it was actually pretty fun. Bye.